Hi everybody, hola, and welcome back to another edition of the Astrology Show here on the Wisdom Hub. As is now a nice tradition, myself and the wonderful, beautiful, national treasure astrologer that is Pam Gregory, we are going to be talking today about our upcoming autumn or Libra Equinox. So hi Pam, as always, it's an absolute delight to be chatting with you in these most momentous of times and to be talking about what's coming up. How are you doing?
Yeah, remarkably well, actually. Remarkably well. Seem to be sort of thriving amidst it all. And, boy, does the astrology help us to keep a higher perspective. So, yeah, delighted to be here with you. We're moving into the biggest times of the year. And I said that actually way back in January. I said, this would be the real culmination, moving into particularly October, November, but even starting in September. This is big stuff for us. I mean, it's big stuff on an evolutionary scale, not just thinking about, 1 month to the next, where we are looking at a massive evolutionary jump as we move into these next few months.
Right. I mean, you've been saying since the beginning of the year, and even since I think last year when we started doing these quarterly pieces, that this was always going to be the tricky time. As you say, there's kind of a motif, I think, at the moment of being super present in this moment, but understanding this moment is part of a big moment for everybody. And I think the astrology we're going to get into today ahead of the Libra Equinox is going to show us how to navigate the different choices. There are definitely a lot of choices right now. And I think that's going to be a big part of what we're going to talk about. But this show is going to go out on the Virgo new moon. So are we going to be starting a little bit about that? Because I think it's going to be setting the metronome for the rest of the month. And Virgo new moon is actually exactly what we need right now from what I'm seeing. So where are we going to start?
Purification. Absolutely. A lot about purification and cleansing. I think it's going to be a lot about that coming up.
Right. This is also, a new moon for healing with Virgo, but also one about plant medicine. And of course, we're going to be bringing the plants into today's discussion as well, as we always do, because the plants really are stepping up and helping us big time right now. Those of us that did the dandelion immersion recently are still palpably feeling the very, very positive effects of working with what we came to realize is a being from the Sirius star system. This is a very, very profound star being that we are working with, who really, now I understand more clearly, is overseeing the architecture of the shift to a new Earth timeline, but also a template for living in the new Earth. So when we start to merge these kinds of modalities of working with the astrology and with the plant medicine, we're now seeing, I feel, like a much more cohesive path through some of the more challenging aspects, which is also what we're going to be talking about today. So I'm going to hand over to you now, Pam, as we normally do, to get into the bigger piece, and then we'll start to break it apart a bit further into the show. So
yeah, and I love what you were just saying there, really, Davyd, because it's about it's about really seeing our universe as a cosmic whole.
Yes.
It's a cosmic whole, and I love that that connection to all the plant medicines, because we have so dominated nature for centuries, and particularly in modern life. We live in cities and concrete blocks, etc., and there's this feeling of disconnection from nature. But your work is all about connection to nature, and I think what we have coming up is the choice to reconnect in a major way to nature. And that is absolutely vital, I feel, in terms of a positive growth going forwards, an organic growth that is natural, but at a higher level of being. And I'm going to be talking quite a lot about the Kuiper belt objects in this, which the promise of those takes us to a higher state of being. And this is going to be happening fast. I mean, we are on a fast train of evolution right now.
So fast, right?
Just hang it on in. So choices become really important. So yeah, so thank you for that entry point. Yeah, things are happening, lickety split for sure. So you want me to go into the chart now, Davyd?
Yeah, we can do. In fact, just to loop back to where we started when we did these pieces, was the organic versus the inorganic, piece right back. And we're still in that place of choice, actually, with the two different kind of Aquarian futures that we were seeing even then. And I think we're seeing even more clearly now. But yes, I love the idea of the cosmic whole, because we are fractal. we are the individual whole, a part of the cosmic whole, and I think that's also really important to bring in. But yeah, please bring up the chart. Let's get into this.
Yeah, I love that, and it's so interesting that, you know, the Libra equinox is so much of it is about choices, so much. So let me see if I can share the screen here. Is that coming up, David?
It is, yeah. We got the right screen this time. We had a couple of little technological misfires on the preview before we got into this. So yeah, we have the Libra Equinox chart here, and I see you've also put some of the KBOs we're going to be discussing, which is going to be super interesting. So yeah,
it really is. Yeah, and you know, I'm writing these in for the moment because, you know, there's so much complexity in this chart already, and if I put in symbols, which I'm starting to investigate, you know, I think it would just kind of blow people's brains. There'd be a kind of, you know, overload. So I'm trying to keep this as simple as I possibly can. So the Libra equinox is defined at the moment that the sun enters Libra, 0 of Libra. And simply because I live in the UK, I've set up this chart for the UK, but obviously you can relocate this to wherever you are, whichever geography you're at. And of course, Libra is all about choices. It's the sign of choices. You know, it's like the seesaw, it's the scales. Do we go this way or we go that way? And so much of this, you know, we've got Mars in Gemini, dual sign. We've got Neptune in Pisces in its own sign, dual sign. We've got so much about an absolute crux, an absolute crossroads at this time of choices. Which way are we going to go? And I think in an evolutionary perspective, these choices are massively, massively important for us as individuals in terms of where we're heading, but also for the Earth and the cosmos in total. So trying to take this step by step. So here's the sun, 0 of Libra, conjunct Mercury. And Mercury here is retrograde. So Mercury is going back over something, and very soon, of course, it'll retrograde back into Virgo, which is the facts and the details. So there's going to be a lot of going back over the facts and details, and that's going to be a very important part of this Libra equinox, I think, and in making your choices. You know, let's really, when Mercury goes retrograde, I personally love Mercury retrograde because I was born with it, but it's a much more thorough sifting, digging deeper into what the facts and the information actually say. And this is also, whatever the facts and the information actually say, is going to be a really big deal for 2 reasons. Firstly, the Sun and Mercury are being opposed by Jupiter, which expands everything, blows everything up, as it were. And Jupiter rules Sagittarius, one of the signs connected to legalities. The other sign connected to legalities, scales of justice, Libra. So we may see some legal issues of significance coming up then. And I say of significance because the Sun and Mercury here are actually on what's called the supergalactic center. And the supergalactic center is at 2 degrees 22 of Libra. And whenever planets are at the galactic center, the supergalactic center, the great attractor, etc., and these very, very pivotal cosmic points, it's blown up. I mean, it's already blown up because it's opposite Jupiter. It's blown up in a really huge way for us as humanity. So I think whatever is unfolding at this time, because this propels us into an incredibly intense October and November, I mean the biggest months of the year by a mile. This is the setup for it. And the supergalactic center consists of 30 galaxies, including ours, that rotate around this massive black hole with a huge gravitational force. And so whatever is happening round about this Libra equinox is huge. And it is very much, as you set up, David, very much about choices, you know, because we've got Mercury here, which is the ruler of Libra, squaring Mars in a dual sign, and also essentially squaring Neptune. This is a T-square in a dual sign, fishes swimming in opposite directions. So we're going to be faced at this time with some very, very important choices for our future as individuals. You know, which way are we going to go? And I've talked at great length. I think I've kind of beaten these subjects to death over the last sort of year or two, in that we have two incredibly important squares that are happening in the sky that are getting tighter right now. We have Pluto square to Eris, Pluto at 26 of Capricorn, square to Eris at 24 of Aries. And we also have, again, coming closer together, Saturn at 19 of Aquarius square to Uranus at 18 of Taurus. They are both coming together again, like pincer movements. And really, both of them are really about major choices for the future. Again, which way you're going to go. And it's about, Eris is about, particularly in Aries, is about kind of the social renegade, really, the person who goes their own way, who challenges authority, all of that. Because there's such a belief in equality for all, not equality in a kind of Chinese homogeneous sense, not that kind of imposed equality, but just everybody must have a voice in society. And it's running up against Pluto with this very, very dominant, top-down authority. And in a sense, it's similar themes, as I've talked at great length, between Saturn and Uranus. Saturn is governmental authority, control, the way we've always done it, obey the rules, etc. Uranus is not a friggin' hope of that. We're going to be very individual. We're going to go our own way. We want our freedom. And in these battles, Uranus, as we know, will always win because it's the further out planet. Further out planets always win over the closer in planets. So those are the very big themes about control versus freedom, etc. And they are both coming back to a kind of tighter pincer movement, almost, I want to say, of squares as we move into autumn, September, October, November, northern hemisphere. So big issues around choice. And what I think is important to say as well is Saturn here at 19 of Aquarius is still square to the nodal axis. I haven't put the south node in, but it is always, did I say always, exactly conjunct the north node. So this is in a slightly wide, but nevertheless T-square. So that is, that's very much about building new social structures for the future, building social structures, Aquarius, for the long term, which are going to last, which are enduring. And that can actually be very positive. We give Saturn a bit of a hard time, but nevertheless, this is about building new social networks, platforms that are practical and realistic. So, but a lot about choice in here, as I say, Libra, Gemini, even Pisces being dualistic signs, a lot about choice here. Shall I keep going, David? Because I've got quite a lot to say about the KBOs.
Yeah, so I'm just going to jump in for a couple of seconds here. I mean, the thing that really strikes me the most is how many planets are in retro during this Libra Equinox. So, building on the theme of the Mercury retro, going back over the facts and details. I mean, we can get into that a little bit later on, but I'm sure it's kind of obvious what that could be referring to. But with all of these retros, would it be fair to say that we are going through a whole period of review as we kind of come to the end of as we come to the end of this epoch, really? Let's call it what it is. This is the end of an age. And we are now, I believe, in a process of forced evolution. We have to shift. The astrology tells us we have to shift, and we have a choice to shift or not. And I feel that this last piece with the retros is the final review for you to kind of say, have I made the right choice? Or maybe do I need to make a choice if I haven't already? So it's super interesting. But yeah, there's so many things that are already chiming in, just to say about Saturn, he gets a bad rep, but I've come to like the old fella, to be honest, because what he is showing us is a way to have a new structure, maybe one that we choose to co-create rather than perhaps one that's been forced on us. And I think that the fact that he's squaring Uranus in the North Node in Taurus, but also squaring the South Node in Scorpio, which I want to get into a little bit too. Being so Scorpio, I have a strong resonance with that particular aspect right now. But these are all big parts of like what's gone before and what's coming, I think, to us, and how do we choose? How do we feel about all of that? So just a couple of comments there, but yeah, please get into the KBOs.
Yeah, I mean, very well said, because Libra, of course, is all about choice. You know, it very much is the sign linked to choice. You know, this end of the seesaw, if you like, or the other end. So this is a crucial time of choice for everyone, for every single individual.
Absolutely.
So, gosh, so where do I begin with this? There's just so much to say here. I think, you know, to start with Ixion here, Ixion, who is so important now. Ixion is essentially on the world axis because he's at 0 of the cardinals. Remember, 0 of the cardinals, give or take 2 degrees either way, 28 of the mutables to 2 of the cardinals. This is known as the world axis. So that really throws any planet or Kuiper belt object dwarf planet into prominence. Now, Ixion is known as the lawless brother of Pluto, as I remember. Yes, lawless brother of Pluto. And he's a pretty wild character because he went around really without any moral compass at all. And he murdered several people. And really, when he was given a second chance with Zeus, he blotted his copybook further by attempting to rape Zeus's wife. So he really, you know, messed up big time. He was absolutely beyond hope in terms of any moral compass. He wouldn't obey any rules. He wouldn't obey any laws. He was a wild character.
Bit of a rotter, really, I think, in the great scheme of things.
Yeah, absolutely. But what is very interesting is that he also has a very different side, which again is not following the social mores, not following the social rules, but at a higher level of being. And just remember what I've just said about how that may be playing out in society. Just remember what I've just said there. And I want that to have real weight for people. And I know many people will understand. But at a higher level of expression, this is about finding your bliss. Absolutely finding your bliss in society. Again, not being mainstream, but to explore other ways of making life much simpler, much more loving, much more compassionate, and following your bliss in your own very individual way. And then that becomes, you know, absolutely beautiful. So life becomes simpler, the strength through joy, you're on a passionate spiritual mission, etc. So this is very instructive for us in terms of choice. Some of the work I'm referring to here is Kelly Hunter, who we both know and love. Some of her research, some of it is a wonderful man called Alan Clay, who runs the Dwarf Planet University. So I very much want to credit him as well with some of this. But ultimately, it's about finding your bliss. At the higher level of expression, this is about finding your bliss. You know, living on your own terms and not being defined by mainstream society. So there's a big split in expression about how this is working. This is conjunct Quaoar. Quaoar I've talked about before. Quaoar kind of out of chaos. This is linked to the Tongva people who lived around the Los Angeles basin. It's linked to their myths, but out of chaos, through living in joy and living in dance, they created something beautiful. Yeah. So they knew that through song and dance, they shifted their energy to a higher state of being to manifest something much more beautiful. So there's a lot of promise with this. And these are, you know, Quaoar's not at 0 of the cardinals, and it's beyond the 2 degrees, but Ixion is. So Ixion's got a very big, you know, when these planets or dwarf planets are thrown into prominence on the Aries point, as we call it, 0 of the cardinals, they become very, very important in our consciousness and our world. And then if we move up to Manwe, Manwe is right on the Aries point. So 0 of Aries, 034. Sorry, I'll just have a quick slug of water here. So right on the Aries point. So Manwe with his wife Vada, it was said that they created the universe. If you read Tolkien's Silmarillion, all of the myth is there. But Manwe operates at a very high level of being, and he essentially created our world from this very high level of consciousness. And it's all about how do we create light over dark, all about creating light over dark, those being the choices. And there's something very exquisite about that, because it's right at the beginning of the zodiac, that this is really forcing a choice in our big world, as it were. Yeah. Manwe is all about expressing ourselves at the higher level, creating our dream, but it's the winning of light over dark more than anything.
Yeah.
And so that is conjunct Jupiter. You know, in the ordinary bread and butter world, you know, Jupiter was the king of the gods kind of thing. And these Kuiper belt objects go way beyond that. And they have such a high level of expression, such a high level of being. And also Jupiter is conjunct Salacia, who I've talked about before. Salacia was the wife of Neptune in myth. She's linked to that. She's mermaid energy. She's linked to that shimmering sunlight and moonlight on the water. And for me, she's linked to liquid light. You know, liquid light, this very high, this is where we're moving to, this shift in our energy from kind of, you know, solidity and 3D kind of weightiness to something which is a light body. I think she's very much about the light body. So there's something that, you know, all of this is shifting to a different state of being, a higher level of being, which is just fascinates me. I mean, that's really where my interest in my research is happening right now. And then we come to Altjira, which is conjunct Mars. And Altjira is very linked to Aboriginal myth. It's the big dreaming. And how really that you can, again, by going on a, you know, almost a spiritual pilgrimage, that you can create something really beautiful. The big dreaming. What can we create that is really magical, you know, in our choices? And do not accept what has gone before, you know, create something beautiful. All of these Kuiper belt objects, dwarf planets, are operating at a very, very high level of bliss and meaning. And that's what is so immensely exciting. And as I say, Ixion is on the world axis, 0 of Capricorn, 0 of the cardinals, and so is Manwe. And so that is massively pivotal and in terms of galvanizing this new earth. And it really is kicking off big time with the Libra Equinox, with the sun being at that cardinal point too. So it's very, very powerful. And of course, this is also forming another T-square here. You know, we have the Venus, Mars, Neptune T-square. And actually, this is very interesting because often it's said that Neptune is the higher expression, the kind of esoteric expression of Venus. If Venus equals love in a kind of human sense, Neptune is spiritual love, you know, highest expression, unconditional love. And then we have this other T-square that's happening here in the cardinals, the Sun and Mercury opposing Jupiter and squaring particularly Ixion, but also Quaoar. So something is being created very powerfully. There's a kind of galvanization of this higher consciousness or higher state of being. And we choose what level of Ixion we express at. Are we a renegade, lawless person who disregards, breaks all spiritual law in murdering people here and there? I know you understand what I'm saying here. Or are we going to choose the higher path here of really finding your bliss through expressing at a much higher level of being and living through joy, this passionate spiritual mission to live through joy. And in a way, the Kuiper belt objects to me bring a kind of simplicity into the energy, because boy, the 3D world is crazy and busy. If I was actually involved in the 3D world, which thank goodness I'm lucky enough to be able to pull back from it, my consciousness would just be scattered like gravel. If I was watching the news, which I haven't done for 2.5 years, I'm incredibly lucky to be an astrologer and be self-employed and work from home. I'm incredibly blessed, but I've also created that reality because I don't really want to be kind of out in that wider world. I want to kind of pull back and create from the inside out. I want to create my world from the inside out, my energy, my bliss, very much about creating your bliss here. And I'm lucky enough through the astrology to have maybe spotted that coming down the track and saying, okay, the way I've got to do that is through self-employment, etc., etc. But these Kuiper belt objects, which I absolutely love, are operating at a much higher state of being, a much higher consciousness, that in a strange kind of way, if we can get there, is so much simpler. So much that there's a whole shift of consciousness that's much, much simpler, and it's much more inner than outer.
Right. So, do you want to bring the chart back down, Pam, and we'll just get into a bit of chit chat? Super interesting, and I just want to echo the gratitude to both Kelly, who I'm now doing some more regular monthly shows with, looking more at the Kuiper belt objects. It's called Moons and Mythos, so that's something that's very exciting because we're both very interested in the mythological aspects of these, often very indigenous, or in the case of Manwe from Tolkien, who I think was also a prophet. But these higher notes are giving us a different way of looking at the astrology, which I think is really important. And I don't know Alan so well, but I do receive his information at the Dwarf Planet University. So again, just want to thank those people for bringing this information into our awareness, because it feels very pioneering, actually, the work with the Kuiper belt objects, which to me is also a big part of the play that we're in right now. Is that, do we have that pioneering spirit to kind of propel us or project us into a new Earth timeline? Because this is something that I understand that we've not really ever done before. This is an experiment that I understand has been tried before, maybe didn't work so well with Lemuria or Atlantis, but now we are trying again to be higher dimensional beings embodied in a three-dimensional spacesuit, otherwise known as the body. So I think that it's really interesting to bring in these Kuiper belt objects. And again, what I get from what you just shared, the same as I did when I did the piece with Kelly, is that those, at the 0 degrees of Aries, this is a new beginning, right?
Totally, 100%. Yeah, and in the myth, Manwe and Vada created the world. This is about world renewal because he's on the very first degree of the zodiac. This is a whole new beginning for what we're calling New Earth, because he's at such a pivotal point, and so is Ixion. Right on the friggin', 0 of the cardinals. I mean, it doesn't get, because they have about a 300-year orbit, these Kuiper belt objects. So they don't come past those 0 degree cardinal points very often. So that's why it's so powerful. Very much about world renewal, very much about creating the world we want.
Right, and I think this is the exciting moment that we're in, and by bringing in these Kuiper belt objects, I know sometimes it's a little confusing, maybe for people. It's already confusing enough sometimes with astrology, and now we've got more. But it's part of the shift, and it is all about a choice. And I just want to echo a couple of things you just said as well. That right now it's very easy to become fragmented. There are a lot of unhelpful frequencies or energies or things being projected at us that are in some ways designed to fragment us so that we don't get to be in our hearts and be present. And that's when perhaps we can make not such good choices if we're not clear. I think clarity is a big part of the piece right now. How clear are you? And I just want to echo back again, and I'm probably going to do this quite a bit throughout the rest of this episode, to Dandelion. He taught all of us who did the immersion so much, but the most important thing he really showed me was that by being present in the moment, which is the only thing that actually exists, that gave me the opportunity to be really present in my heart and to really observe the choices I was making. Even simple choices like, you know, am I going to go into a city today where maybe the energy is a little more difficult? If I do, does that mean I have to do a little more cleansing on myself when I come home? My choice to go or not go, but if I do go, I know that there's a consequence I will have to then work with afterwards. And you can use that kind of philosophy for almost anything. Everything is a choice. And, you know, like you said, you know, some of us some time ago, before all of this process started in 2020, had the indications from the astrology, or maybe in my case, from my indigenous elders, who all said, yeah, the beginning of 2020, spring 2020, something is going to start changing your world completely. So I advise getting prepared. If you did, great. If you didn't, well, okay, you've left it a little late, but there's still a couple of drinks maybe being served in the last chance saloon, which is why I think we've got this retrograde option, which is like, okay, if you haven't done the full review on yourself right now, then I would really suggest that now is the only time to do it. And Dandelion really showed me so many things actually about how to deal with what's going on right now. And there's a couple of times I got a little stressed with some uploading stuff, with some videos, and a piece that I was actually doing with the Ascended Master Zach, and, you know, being channeled by Janet. And I was getting a little bent out of shape because the video wasn't uploading and it wasn't meeting my timeline that I had decided. So later that evening, Dandelion sat me down and said, okay, sit down, you're stressed, dude. Why are you stressed? Well, because the video's not going out and I promised everybody and da-da-da. He said, yeah, but you didn't ask me or Zach when was the video going out. So I'm like, no, I didn't. And he said, we always decided the video was going to go out tomorrow. So best thing that you can do right now, buddy, is sit down, analyze where the stress is coming from, and maybe have a beer while you're doing it and just enjoy yourself. Because he said, we do not do stress in the new earth. And if you're stressed, you need to have a look at why. So I really took this on board, and I'm sharing it because actually what it's done is really show me how I create stress for myself. Again, a choice. Am I choosing to be stressed, or am I going to go into the garden, sit by the trees and the beautiful plants and everything, and go, you know what, I don't need to be stressed. Why am I being stressed? I don't need it. So I'm just sharing this because I feel like all of these are part of the bigger motif of Libra and choice. And me personally, you know, yeah, sure, Ixion, he's a character, right? I have him conjunct my Mars in Scorpio. So that guy's caused me a few problems in my life. Now that I know more about him, I see his fingerprints on a few episodes here and there. But I love what you said, you know, at the higher expression of Ixion, he is living life on his own terms.
Yes.
Now, I'm not suggesting that means we should all go out and be murderers and rapists, because I feel like there's enough of that energy in the world already, right? You know, as Ixion has shown us the lower notes. But if we decide to live on our own terms with these Kuiper belt objects and the creative energies, which to me is so obvious with everything you just shared, you know, the liquid light to me feels etheric, feels about the expansion of our light body so that we can receive more light into the body, right? You know, and if we can receive more light, then those lower frequencies that maybe stress us out or give us anxiety, they don't affect us anymore because we're just not in that space. And,
yeah, that's
you know,
right.
again, I use the phrase forced evolution. I'm seeing it in my own life. I'm seeing it in all of my, you know, all of my healer friends. It's wherever we have a little emotional trigger, particularly in public, if we express those emotional triggers, we're receiving some kind of unhelpful effect from the environment around us due to the high levels of toxicity that are in our environment right now. And so this is, it's a little harsh actually sometimes to have to deal with this, but it's really shown me, oh my gosh, I got triggered in public by, sometimes it's a good trigger, you know, maybe a homeless person or somebody who's in distress, all of which, you know, is creating a sense of empathy within me. But if I allow that empathy to become a trauma that I then, you know, am getting triggered by, then I leave myself vulnerable to those more toxic energies. And I think this is a big piece that I want to share right now, is that There are different types of empathy, for sure. There are three major types of empathy. Actually, we have what's called affective empathy, somatic empathy, and cognitive empathy. And affective empathy is the ability to be able to respond to other people's emotional outbursts. Somatic empathy is the ability to feel what another person is feeling. And then cognitive empathy is understanding someone's response to something. Now, if we can really get all of these down and understand from a non-dual perspective what empathy really is, by being in our hearts with the unconditional love of particularly the feline beings, again, Dandelion, Dionte the lion's tooth, he really showed us how to bring forth that royal, noble heart so that we can be in a place of empathy, but not leave ourselves vulnerable to maybe other situations or other people's situations. So again, this I think is a bit about boundaries. I work with Nettle a lot on boundaries. It's like, sure, I'm absolutely in my heart, I'm empathizing, I'll do what I can for you, but I can't risk my own journey because I have to look after myself. And so it's this kind of interesting juxtaposition about doing what is right for yourself because you are holistic, but also being part of the holistic whole because we're fractal. So again, I think this is about balance, about Libra, right?
Yeah, it's so interesting. And, it's so interesting. This whole issue about choice points, it's very interesting because Libra obviously has two ends of the scale. Which way we're going to go in these pivotal times. Mars is in Gemini. This can scatter the mind. It's a dual sign. Neptune is in Pisces, the two fishes swimming in opposite directions. So it's going to be very, very easy at the lower levels of expression and consciousness for you to get scattered and buffeted by external events. And that's why we absolutely have to bring it back to our center and say, no, I live from my center. I create my world from the inside out. I don't have my world created for me from the outside in. Because
Right.
actually, when you do that, it becomes just so simple. Because all you've got to focus on what's my frequency today? What's my frequency? Can I just drop into my heart? Because if I live from the outside in, boy, life is complicated. I'm going, really big scary thing over there. Just seen the news, no, really big scary thing over there. And those very men arriving. You're just buffeted. And there's a lot of potential for buffeting here because we've got a lot of mutable energy, Pisces, Gemini, Venus, and mutability almost is reactive. It needs something to come in to react to. But the sun is at 0 of Libra, the cardinal signs. I decide my energy. I decide my state of being. And we've really got to live from the inside out from now on with blinkers on. I decide my frequency. I decide where I'm going. I decide my dreams, my visions, where I'm headed. And I'm not buffeted by anything that, it's really dramatic. I'm not going to look over there. Well, that's really scary. I'm not going to look over there. And, I am absolutely, and this is our mastery. This is our mastery in this time, particularly with so much mutable energy coming up in this season. I think that's really important.
I do. I totally agree with you too. There are a lot of very fragmentary energies out there that will seek to distort your energy field and your sense of clarity. And that's, I guess, an ongoing job for all of us right now to find a way to deal with that. But as you've so clearly just said, being present, being grounded, being rooted, again, plants like dandelion or even the masterful oak tree, they really root us with the deep, roots into the earth, strong central trunk and the branches to the higher realms. I love oak. He really helps me to hold my own space. But also boundary plants like nettle. I'm able to say, no, you know what, I hear it from many people that they get cornered sometimes into situations where they feel they have to agree to something they don't want to agree to because there's so much pressure being put on them. I think that this is a time for us to go, you know what? Okay, thank you for the offer, but that doesn't work for me. I'm going to say no, and I'm going to go and do something that does work for me. And just to be strong enough to say that. And if the other person gets offended by you just holding your ground, well, then that's really on them. And not to absorb that. And as I'm sure many of your listeners, like both of us, are very empathic, and naturally that way. We can sometimes get undone by being a little bit too boundaryless and absorbing everyone else's stuff and trying to keep everybody happy. In the end, what I found myself is that then I wasn't happy and I wasn't centered and I wasn't feeling so great. And right now, I feel the best thing that I can do for myself and the people around me is to be centered, grounded, happy, calm in my heart with the joy. That's it. That is the most powerful tool that we all have as individuals right now to work through this space, not just for ourselves, because once we're centered in ourselves, then we can start to reach out to those around us who might be asking us for help. But if we're coming into that space all jumbled up with the wrong ideas, and perhaps even feeling because of karma or astrology or our life that we have to be constantly in service to validate ourselves, something that came to me recently was that we shouldn't be in service to servitude, which I like. It's just like, I've been blessed enough to talk with Zach a lot. And he said, look, one of the most powerful things you can do, brother, to be in service is be in your heart, emitting the frequencies of joy and unconditional love. And he said, that is the most powerful thing you can do right now. So I just want to share that, because I'm really working with the energy with Dandelion, particularly, who's very much, he's often known as a liver cleanser, but we came to realize during the immersion that the liver is really in service to the emperor, as the Chinese would say, which is the heart. And the heart needs to be left completely toxin and contamination free so that we can have that direct conduit to our fifth dimensional self, which of course is heart energy, unconditional love. So the heart is our 3D mechanism to connect directly to our higher self. And I just want to share that, because I think
that's really well said. Because with all this mutable energy, we've got quite a lot of mutable energy at the Libra Equinox. So there's potential for scattering. Do I go this way or do this way? It's very easy to, particularly Mars in Gemini, because Gemini is ruled by Mercury, the mind. Mars energizes it, and it's very easy to have mental overload at this time. And be scattered around. Do I go this way? Do I go that way? This way, that way? Neptune's also in that dual sign, Pisces. And also even Libra, the Sun and Mercury in Libra, that's a seesaw, that's the scales, this way or this way. So very vital choice points right now. And it's easy to become scattered if you're living from the outside in. You've got to live from the inside out, because when you do that, you get into much stronger heart coherence. Your heart's toroidal field becomes much bigger. You're beaming out love to the world as opposed to confusion. And you are actually in every moment actually benefiting the collective, whether you realize it or not, because you're affecting the collective energy field. Just silently, you're doing that 24/7. If you can stay in your heart. And that's why living from the inside out is so you're focused on one thing. Maybe two things. What's the state of my heart and what's my frequency? And what am I beaming out? So this is your broadcaster, not being, buffeted from, another scary. We've got to really master this living from the inside out. And these mutable energies challenge that, quite frankly. A lot of mutability.
Again, I think this is all part of the process. We're being challenged so that we really understand what is it to be sovereign. Again, the heart energy, sovereign. Again, it's the cats, it's Dandelion. It's so obvious to me right now that we have these beings who want to assist us when we understand the astrology, when we understand that when we're in our heart, we have so much support coming from upstairs, as we call it, but from the higher dimensional beings. And, you're just saying something made me realize often I think of, 5D down into 3D, which is actually, it's not the best way of looking at it, because 5D is in here, 5D is out into the 3D. And so when we're in the 5D non-dual space of unconditional love, we're in the heart and we can project that outwards, but we have to make sure that the inner world is nice and calm. And if we're getting triggered, then this is an opportunity, and we have to take the opportunity to say, thank you very much. I see now that I'm getting a little triggered here. I'm still having an emotional response. Now, that's not to say that being 5D in the heart means that we're unemotional, because that's not correct, but we're choosing to be in different higher emotional frequencies of joy and bliss, rather than anxiety and overwhelm and fear. Fear is a big piece that has been used in various ways over the last few years to keep us in those lower frequencies. And, I sometimes wonder, Neptune in Pisces, is that the old illusion box where the illusions are projected at us? And really, again, if we don't look at the illusion box, is it really there? It's a bit like if we didn't see the tree fall in the forest, did it really fall down? Who knows? Maybe I don't even need to bother thinking about it or looking for it, because you know what, as long as my world is in balance and in harmony, then everything is okay, because I'm choosing to live on that frequency. And strange as it may seem, if many of us choose to do that right now, then everything will become like that, because that's the natural frequency that everything around us will start to vibrate at, and that will attract things at that level. So
absolutely, 100%. So it stops the scattering.
Stops the scattering, right? And I think that once we get our fields back to ourselves by doing meditative exercises, checking in with yourself every day. You know, it's no good to check in with yourself once a month and see how are you doing, even once a week. Right now, it's about being super present. What is going on for me now? That's it. Am I feeling okay? Am I feeling happy? Am I about to go out and spend some time with some friends doing some really cool things? Yes, sounds like a great idea. Am I like sitting cowering in the corner in the shadows watching the illusion box, absolutely petrified about what's coming down the road? No, I'm absolutely not doing that. And I would suggest that that's not a good way to navigate this process. But at the same time, I do want to just loop back to something and get your thoughts on this. The nodes being squared by Saturn, and, you know, North Node in Taurus, about, as you so beautifully said so many times, grassroots up Taurus. It's about fractal organic life, right? Not inorganic life. And I do see that in the Aquarian age that is upon us, we have different choices, and not all of those choices are necessarily organic fractal life. Again, where are you choosing to go, right? But South Node in Scorpio, I feel, is a big piece right now with the Virgo new moon, because we have a collective poison in the collective that needs to be lifted out and needs to be released. And we also have a lot of shadow that hasn't been released yet either. And we're heading into Scorpio territory, not that far down the road. And I would suggest that if you've still got some shadow stuff to look at, don't wait until Scorpio season. I would do it before then. Work with this Virgo new moon of healing and plant medicine with a strong intention that you want to release anything that's no longer serving you. And I can speak from 100% direct experience that if you choose to do that right now, wow, big stuff can be released really quickly in a matter of a couple of days. Stuff that may have taken you years of therapy or whatever in the past, or lots of, you know, plant medicine ceremonies. Just by being present with your heart, you can explore and you can see the gifts of whatever might have been troubling you. And that's also, I think, very much how we flip from the lower end of the scales to the upper end of the scales, is seeing that everything is a blessing and a gift.
Yeah, that's really well said, David. And also, Virgo is about purification.
Again, right?
Very much about purification before we hit Scorpio season, because I think an awful lot is going to come out individually and collectively in society about toxicity. Yes. In all kinds of ways. And so the more we can purify our system now, you know, Virgo, the Virgin, you know, there's a tremendous sense of purifying your diet, purifying your thoughts, purifying all of it, and trying to live, you know, in that kind of harmonious place of, you know, every morning when I wake up before I open my eyes, you know, I say, I live in peace and joy and bliss. I live in peace and joy and bliss, because that sets my energy for the day and prevents me from getting kind of swept up and too scattered. So there's Virgo's very much about purification. It's the Virgin. So the more we can do that with our diet, with our thinking, because Virgo is also ruled by Mercury, which is, you know, how the thinking pollutes the body, the better off we're going to be by the time we hit Scorpio season. Because October, November, I said it way back in January, these are the biggest months of the year by a mile in terms of a crescendo of the collective. And our choices need to be very clear. You know, Mars in Gemini, choice. They need to be very, very clear indeed and Libra, choice, when we get to that point, because we are in the pre-run, we're in the setup for that now. But October, November, massive month. So be very clear on who you are, what your energy is, how you hold that frequency together coherently day to day, because that energetically, not just, you know, say in your head, I choose X, Y, Z, your energy chooses your future trajectory, because that's how we choose our timelines, by our energy. And we're not even conscious of it half the time. But if we can become conscious of it, we're much more likely to choose a higher timeline. Right,
exactly. You know, and the beautiful thing about the astrology is it shows us the pathway forwards, and there is a certain fatality or destiny about that is outside of our control. But how the picture gets colored in at the personal level, which then does reflect the collective, is entirely up to us. And, you know, again, I would suggest don't do what I think humanity has done for a long time, which is kick the can down the road and hope that it's going to go away, because I'm sorry, it's whatever is going on, it's not going to go away. And so again, forced evolution, this is something for our benefit if we allow ourselves to choose that. And it doesn't have to be super painful, doesn't have to be some horrible kind of carnival sideshow or whatever, but at the same time we are being asked to really see for ourselves, where am I still a little bit vulnerable? And as we come, this is the powerful thing about the equinoxes and the solstices, that at the autumn equinox we shift from the element of water into the element of earth as we go into the slow descent into the void, which is winter. Now that sounds kind of like, oh, the void, the darkness. It's like, no, this is the place of creativity. This is the womb space, which is why in our lands we often have the sacred medicines, the fungi, that allow us to go inwards during those darker winter days when there's less light, so that we can decompose the stuff that no longer serves us. And so this is why we have these medicines available, actually, particularly in the northern hemisphere in September. But this, this can be used anywhere in the world, just to understand that the time of water is coming to its conclusion. But water also represents not just emotions, but the harvest time. Whatever you have already sown in your life, or over the last year, or over the last few years, this is the time to gather the resources before we head into the more difficult winter period, which, I think is going to be challenging. But if you're prepared because of the choices you've made to be prepared, rather than not looking at what's going on, you're going to be okay. And, this is, I guess we could say that this is the time of gathering the harvest and putting it into the granary as we go into the earth period. And, just want to bring that in because it is really important. The elemental shifts have a profound effect on us when they happen at the equinoxes and the solstices. And one of the most profound is when we come back out into spring and we go from that air energy that we get from a solstice to winter solstice to spring equinox, and then we go into the fire energy, which is when all of the plants come up. And so we have this beautiful period now to assimilate, to get ready, to hunker down, to be with ourselves, to be present as we head into the winter months, which, as you've so eloquently outlined, could be a little messy, a little challenging. And so we need to make sure that before that's honest, that we're not fragmented, that we're grounded, centered and rooted.
Yeah, really well said, David. And the more grounded, centered and rooted we are, the easier this journey will be.
Right.
And I love the idea of a choice point, because that's Libra, 0 of the cardinals, that's Libra. But we also, so importantly have Ixion at 0 of the cardinals, Manwe at 0 of the cardinals. This is a massive time of evolution, given that those outer dwarf planets, those KBOs, have around a 300-year orbit. 200 to 300-year orbit. And because they're so slow, once they hit 0 of the cardinals, it's a big deal in evolutionary terms. It's a really big deal. So we need to get our house in order from any kind of scattering of the past, or being buffeted by the news or world events or whatever, and say, no, I bring myself back to my center. 0 of Aries, Manwe, 0 of Aries, very first degree of the zodiac, and really create our own world. And because in creating our own world, which is based on love, not a romantic love, but love as a state of being, if everything's coming from that, then we get a harmony coming into everything. And the journey, the journey forwards is much less buffeting than it would be if we're just turning on the nightly news and going, every time. We've got to get in control of our own energy systems, and then the journey will be much easier, much more loving, much more compassionate. We're helping many more people because we're broadcasting coherent, loving frequency, as opposed to, terrified frequency or whatever. So these months we're going into are massive evolutionary months, massive. The biggest we've ever been, probably not just in this lifetime, but in almost any lifetime. Not to sort of set the odds too high, but I think they are massive. What we're going into is absolutely gigantic.
I agree.
In terms of promise, in terms of hope, but also in terms of challenge. So you choose your frequency, because you're also choosing your vehicle almost. Or you want a lower timeline, or you want a higher. That's our choice. Nothing is fated in that sense. That's down to us.
Right, and you also mentioned it, and again, just want to bring it into that piece of that Jupiter being conjunct the Sun at 0 degrees of Aries, opposing in opposition to Manwe. It's again more of that energy, right? It's expansion. 0 degrees of Aries is the beginning. It's like a clean slate. It's like, wow, you guys get to design. How does it look with the benefit of Saturn? Thank you, old man. I wanted to share a couple of phrases that I think are important. We're now in a time, and this is one that the Ascended Master Zach gave to us, the spell of being. We can create the spell of our own being. Isn't that beautiful?
Absolutely.
You really think about
100%. Beautifully said, and absolutely. And remember that Manwe and his wife Vada created the universe.
Right.
They are divine beings. He is, the highest archangel, closest to the mind of God in the creation of the universe. And he is passionate about light over dark. And
as we step into this space ourselves consciously, we are being given the opportunity to be the Manways and Vadas in the piece. That's not to overstep the mark, but we are being given the opportunity to shape and design with Mother Earth in co-creation with North Node in Taurus. How does the future look for us? And I think it's so incredibly exciting as long as we're present with ourselves, present with our heart. And, another phrase I want to bring in, which is one from the Minds, which is time is art. And how are you using the present moment in time to create that, like you said, love is also art, right? It's not just about romance, it's an art form. And how do we use these ideas and memes to navigate each day so that we stay, like you, in the place of joy and bliss and enjoyment, while sometimes being surrounded by challenging circumstances that could come from any direction at any moment, because we've got Uranus, that unruly monkey out there who likes to throw the odd banana skin at us and, try and trip us up. But Uranus is, I really feel, giving us that creative spark with that North Node in Taurus right now to expand into whatever we want. And do you choose excitement or do you choose fear? I know which one I would rather choose.
Yeah, because you're choosing your future. The universe is a mirror. You get what you think about all day long. Those things just keep echoing back to us, really. And it's such a massive choice point now in terms of the level at which we're going to live our lives, because, it's fascinating to me that time is very much a 3D linear construct. Right. And astrology, certainly in recent lifetimes for us, has been very much defined by time, by 3D linear reality. But once you get to the Kuiper belt objects, the dwarf planets, time is starting to slip. Time is starting to slip. So we're going beyond 3D reality, and they become more magical. Actually, the energies become much more magical. And so we're going beyond the constraints, the prison, if you like, of 3D reality. Maybe I can retire then, because time will not exist. We're entering, magical realms at that point. We're entering magical realms of manifestation, where you can manifest instantly, knowing how you use focus and intention. And it is just so beautiful to imagine the kind of world we can step into actually right now, because it's available. We've discovered these dwarf planets, therefore they're part of our consciousness already. And the more fully we can shift feet from the 3D to the Kuiper belt objects, the more magical our world will become, individually and collectively.
For sure. And I have the same sense that in some way the perception of linear 3D time is being dissolved. And I just want to share something that's come out of the dandelion experience again, which was that sometimes we have aspects of ourself, we could say they're in past lives or other timelines that seem from the past. And speaking from experience, if any of you out there are feeling some connection to a time frame or people from your past in this life suddenly re-emerge, it suggests, from what dandelion showed me, that there is some still aspect of us in another time space that hasn't quite been resolved. And as we come to the end of this, I guess we could call it an event horizon, where everything is sort of collapsing into the present moment, that if we still have these little jangles coming out from other time spaces, they need to be resolved now. It doesn't have to be a big deal. You can work with intention a lot, but if you're feeling some, like, oh, I'm really feeling something from the Roman times or from the conquistador times. In fact, when I spoke to Zach, he spoke a lot about the period of conquest that happened 500 years ago and how there's a lot of lifting coming out of that, because that was a new timeline that was given to us when we were told that Columbus discovered the Americas. which of course is completely absurd, but that was something that was given to Europeans for several hundred years that they believed. And so there was a very clever inserting there of a different narrative and timeline that completely took away stuff that had come from the past before that. And I'd like to suggest that, as we come to the end of this piece today, I'm going to be working with the Artemisias, the mugworts and the wormwoods of this world, to organize an immersion that starts on the 13th of September, which is the beginning of a new Mayan wave spell. And that immersion will take place over this Libra Equinox for 13 days, working with each of the glyphs and the energies of those days, because the Mayans understood that time is art. And that was the old time, that was their way of understanding time, that was much more connected to the galactics, to the stars, rather than a more kind of 1260 Gregorian calendar, which was kind of somewhat forced on us as a way of manipulating and controlling time. Now we're at a point, by being centered in the present moment, we are taking back control of time to work with it in a new way, which is super exciting. And again, the Artemisias work with cycles of time. They work with the moon cycles. They also work very well with realignment and the circulation of chi energy around our bodies. But they're also very, very good at illuminating the dark spaces where there may still be shadow or poison. And, I would urge everyone listening to consider taking part in this immersion, because it's going to be a collective piece that is going to happen all around the world, with many hundreds of people taking part, all helping to anchor this energy to help us work with this South Node in Scorpio, because we need to get the incoherence out. And I think that's a really important word right now. How coherent are you in your choices, in your body, in your energy, with your, forwards visions for yourself and the people around you? So I just wanted to bring that in. I'm also going to be doing another deep dive with the Ascended Master Zach, being channeled by our favorite Janet Trelawer. And we're going to be doing a preemptive piece ahead of the immersion, which goes live actually the same today with this piece with you. But we're going to be doing a deep dive on the tribal qualities of the Artemisias. And Zach's already said to me, he said, if you think about this wonderful plant clan, they're connected to so many indigenous communities all over the world and have been for millennia. And he said they're one of the most integrated plant clans with humans. And he said there's a really important other piece about this, which is about finding your community and how do you integrate yourself and how do you adapt to that new community in the way that the Artemisias have done all over the world, particularly here in the Americas and Central, North and South America, but also in Europe too. But they're one of the few plants that you can find in every continent, apart from maybe Antarctica, but every sort of habitated continent. So I just wanted to share that because it's very much tied in with the astrology. Dandelion is a big part of that. Dandelion is very solar and about the heart, but the Artemisias are very lunar and about the reflection. So we've got this balance. And as always, when I work with the plants, I don't always know what their plan is, but it often unfolds in the journey. And by entering into that space of co-creation with plants like dandelion or the Artemisias or many of the other ones we've talked about before, we're giving ourselves the opportunity to work with a different type of frequency, which is much more heart-centered, much more healing, much more releasing. And so these plants like the Artemisias can also remove the fragmentation or incoherence or misalignments that we might still be having in our field because we may be still absorbing too much of the illusion box or too much of other people's stuff. So I just wanted to put that out. I know that you've worked with wormwood, so maybe you have something you would like to share about that.
No, I just love, I love this whole idea. We have been so disconnected from nature. We've lived in cities, in high rises, we've been so disconnected, and it's very exciting. And your work is really central, pivotal to this, Davyd, that we reconnect to the organic whole of nature. And I think when we do that, the whole natural world is not only going to shift octave, we're going to shift our interaction with nature in an unimaginably exciting way that we have never, ever thought possible. And that shift is going to happen quite quickly, but we have to be fully in for it, as it were. We're going to say, this is my choice going forwards, that I want to live as part of this, beautiful organic cosmos. And therefore, that's my focus going forwards. I want to revel in nature, revel in joy. And it's going to be such a kind of relaunch for humanity, I think, in a bigger way than we've ever experienced. That feels super. I don't know if I'm even making sense at the moment, but that's what I feel.
Absolutely. And, we've talked about this many times. And again, looping back to the very first piece we did was all about this organic versus inorganic and how we can be in a place of co-creation with Mother Earth. And that's my choice. I'm very open about it. I've talked about it for many years. And I would hope that there will be many others like you, Pam, and many of the listeners who are also on that very earth-based fractal organic tip. If you're not, you can choose something else. That's also fine. From my unconditional heart, everybody, I love all of you, and I just want to say that because we're all going through it right now, and we've all made soul choices, soul contracts, and I'm not in the place of judgment about anybody else's choices. All I can do is concentrate on my own right now, and if I can do that from a place of being energetically, psychically clean, and again, the Artemises, they really help open up the third eye and allow us to see what is really going on for us, what is really going on in the world around us. And this is how they help lift this shadow, because they give us the courage to look and go, but they also give us the tools to release. And that's what I want to say also about plants, is that they really hold us while they take us through a process, but then they give us the healing afterwards too. And there's so many healing plants. I've been doing a wonderful podcast with another brother down in Peru called Sergei Baranov, who works with the heart medicine, the Watchroom of the cactus. And I hear his stories about how the cactus works on the heart and brings people back from a place of fragmentation back into themselves, into the heart. So there are many, many, many wonderful medicines, and I'll post in the show notes the links to the Artemisia and also the dandelion if people still want to get out there and experience some of the transmissions from the dandelion into Artemises. If you follow the pattern that the plants have given us over there, and there's going to be a couple more this year with Elder at Samhain and then the yew tree at winter solstice, the plants gave me a very clear trajectory, which me and Zach have been working on for a while, which is if you follow this process with the plants, you will not only be doing really well, you're going to be rocking and rolling, baby, as we move into the new earth. So I'm just sharing that, out there. Again, a choice. Choose to work with plants or not, it's up to you. You can work with crystals, you can work with sound, you can work with many, many different things. But I know personally from experience that the plants in the astrology do work really well together if you sink into a space with that. So I just wanted to share that. But do you have any final thoughts for today, Pam? We've covered quite a bit of ground.
I really love this. I really love this idea of the organic reconnection that we've lost in modern life. I love that idea of the organic reconnection, because that's who we are. We're just a fractal of nature. And we felt so separate in modern life, and, high rises and cities and all the kind of paraphernalia that goes with modern life. And what I love about now is the magic that's potentially happening with this organic reconnection. It's like an organic reconnection to who we truly are. And we're going to start to live at a high level. We're going to go beyond clock time. We're going to, I can't even express how exciting it feels, because it's going to be a leap. It's not going to be a step 1, 2, 3, 4, it's going to be a quantum leap into a world that is just vivid with divinity, just brilliant with divinity and life in a way that we could never have possibly imagined up to this moment. And that's really exciting, and that's where I'm headed for sure.
Me too. And I love your meme, and I share it often. My life is made of magic and miracles, and I tell myself that every morning, because it's true. My life is made of magic and miracles, and that's a conscious choice that I made some time ago, that I wanted to live my life like that. And when we talk about magic, what we're really talking about is quantum intelligence, and the ability to manifest from the inside out, from the 5D to the 3D. But magic equals quantum. So I want to also start breaking down some of the more woo aspects of these words, because I feel like maybe that's creating some blockages and resistance. And if we understand that manifestation is magic and magic is quantum intelligence, then we're starting to get an idea of the more kind of the kind of place that we're headed to with our trajectories. And so I love what you just said there, Pam. So you know what,
I really agree with that, Davyd. I really agree with what you've just said. It's this reintegration with the magical world that we've lost in modern life. I really like what you said.
And you know what? It never really went away, actually, because the world we live in is completely created by magic. But now I feel maybe we have an opportunity and a choice to create better magic that suits us as individuals and suits the community, rather than suits that Pluto and Capricorn, which, as we move out of that, and it's like the final dredges or dregs of the the top-down system, I think, of being exposed. And I hope that many people out there like us have made a choice. It's like, I don't want to live under that top-down structure anymore. I want to live from a center-out kind of experience. And in that way, everybody is equal. Everybody is my brother and my sister, and we can be in our hearts with each other. And I really believe that we're on the cusp of the most beautiful, magical transition to a new way of being that probably we've never experienced before. So I personally is super excited.
And it's happening already. That's what's
exciting. It is happening. And so as a final thought to our listeners, make a choice. Hopefully you're going to choose the same kind of choices that me and Pam and many of our friends have already made. But if you haven't made that choice, now is the time. Absolutely, now is the time. There is no kicking the can down anymore. This is the big moment that many of us signed up to a long time ago. And we've got front row seats, and we've got the popcorn, and maybe we've got a nice beer too, and whatever else. And now we're going to see the end of the show, and we're going to be participating in the epilogue that comes afterwards, right? We're all going to be on stage together. So
100%.
Thank you. Thank you, our host sisters. So thank you again, Pam, for the opportunity to do this with you. I love these chats. They also always really help me get my thoughts into some kind of coherency, because I don't have the fragmentation, but I have a lot going on in my awareness, and it's the astrology gives me the roadmap, and it gives me the container. And as always, I thank you deeply, as I'm sure all of your listeners and my listeners do, for your ongoing service to humanity. I'm not jesting when I say national treasure. I know that many people share that idea with me. So thank you, Pam, from the bottom of my heart to yours, like for everything that you do. And I hope that by the time we get to winter solstice, that we're all going to be having had a real rock and roll experience, but we're all going to be in better shape. So God bless everybody. Enjoy life. It's meant to be fun. Ciao for now. See you next time.
Lots of love to everyone. Thanks, Davyd. Wonderful. Thank you.